Hello, thank you so much for tuning in to ACTV. I am your host today, Jenny Davidson. I am the CEO and Executive Director at Stand Up Placer. If you haven't heard of us before, we are the county's Rape Crisis Center. We also provide services to survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. We've been in the community for over 40 years. We have the county's only confidential safe house in an undisclosed location, where last year we served over 300 victims and their children and helped them to get into a life of safety and self-determination. We have a housing program where we serve last year about 40 families with 160 people with housing, and they pick out their own housing. We pay their rent for 12 to 24 months and give them home visits, case management, therapy, legal assistance. We have a full-time attorney who helps with family law sort of situations. We have support groups, therapy, crisis intervention, prevention program, outreach. So we're out in your community right now making a difference for victims of crime. And today I have Allan Darte with us, who is one of our amazing managers out there at Stand Up Placer, who's going to tell us sort of about the other side of the house of Stand Up Placer. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thanks for having me today. My name is Allan Darte. I'm the development manager at Stand Up Placer, as Jenny mentioned. My job is very simple. My job is to help raise unrestricted funds for the organization. And really, if you look at my job description, it's a combination of things like public relations, event management, communications, helping manage things like social media and press releases and things of that nature. And most importantly, donor relations and sponsor relations. So I have a history in sales, which is kind of a natural fit for this role, because my job is really all about building relationships with important people who are willing to help our mission.
That's fantastic. So I know for Stand Up Placer, or really for all nonprofits, there is a big difference between restricted funds, unrestricted funds. Can you tell us a little bit about what is the difference? What are unrestricted funds?
Yeah, so unrestricted funds really are funds that come from sources that don't have a lot of reporting involved. So for instance, most of our money right now comes from grant funding. That grant funding has reporting that comes alongside the dollars that come in. Whereas unrestricted funds are more funds that we can use a little more creatively for more unorthodox type services that we may need to provide.
That's awesome. And why is that important?
Yeah, no, the most important reason for those funds is because it helps us cover gaps in services. So for instance, the grant funding has more specific guidelines on how we can use those dollars, and they range in all of our departments, right? So human trafficking, sexual assault, as well as housing, domestic violence. They have specific funds that come to us with restrictions that come with those dollars. Unrestricted funds, though, give us a little more flexibility, and it's important for us to be able to cover those gaps in services that I mentioned. So for a great example that you and I had talked about before the show was, we had a client who we had heard was coming into some situations with her transportation. We came up with a safety plan for her. She was ready to get out of her scenario, but unfortunately her car was impounded, and the car was impounded because it went out of commission. So I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know exactly what happened with the car. I just know that she couldn't fix it. It got towed. It was towed for a very long time, so she had accrued over $2,000 worth of fees just to get this car out of impound. And so you can imagine, for someone who's got a safety plan, they're ready to go, and the only thing keeping them from safety is getting this car fixed. So grant money doesn't cover things like traffic tickets or impound fees or things like that. So we're able to cover the gap in those services there, get her into that's the ultimate goal, right? Get her into safety. So oftentimes there's a lot of boundaries or barriers that get in the way for us to get her to that safe space.
That's fantastic. So then we were able to work with the impound place. We were able to get that fee lowered so that they would work with us because we're a nonprofit. They're willing to lower some of their fees and then use money from a recent fundraiser in order to get money safety.
Great point, because ordinarily if she's facing that situation on her own, there's nobody there advocating for her to lower those costs, so she's paying the full price. Versus when we come in and we advocate for her and they understand the nature of what we do, they're more likely to lower those costs for her, which is kind of a win-win situation.
Awesome. That's fantastic. What are some other ways that unrestricted funding is used for a nonprofit that might be different than what a grant will pay for?
Great question. So, for instance, one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook that are familiar with the nonprofit world, but kind of miss it's like a myth out there, right? About we do get a lot of our grant money does help cover things like the lights being on, right? But they may only help cover for one department. So, for instance, my department in development, where we handle a lot of marketing and promotional materials, our dollars are not covered or not coming from grant monies. So that would be a big difference, right? Like the dollars that the lights are on for the safe house through grant money, but the lights aren't off in my office through grant money. So
can't we just get you some candles?
Right? Well, we could.
No.
Maybe I could revert to those old feathers and ink too. That might help us a little bit.
Right. So, and grants are fantastic. We would never want to not be so super excited about how successful we've been with writing grants, but those grants go for such specific things. Like there are 14 core standard areas that, like our California Office of Emergency Services funding that's given to us through them from VOCA, Victims of Crime Act. And it'll say, we can have a crisis line, we can have therapy, we can have a child advocate, we can respond during a crisis situation and make sure that we have an advocate on scene when something's happening. Those are fantastic. That's the core. That's our bread and butter. What we're doing, why we're doing it.
Right.
But then when we hear, okay, the people who are out on that sting, they also then need an Uber to get to the safe house, or they need an Uber to get to court the next day or something like that. That's not one of our core standards that the grant calls out. So something like that, okay, then we're going to pay for that out of general fund. And I think most nonprofits would say a good balance would maybe be like 60% grant funding, 40% general funding. Because grant funding is nice. You're getting a check on this date for this grant, and it's going to happen. Fundraisers are a little scarier because you don't know. You're walking into a brand new fundraiser. How's it going to do? So it's good to have that around 40%. But we have only about 10% or even less of our budget comes from unrestricted funding. So we're having to be more careful.
So this is why my role is so important. And before I go any further, though, I want to say, thanks to your leadership as well as Louise Chopik. I hope she gets a chance to see this. With her efforts in the grant writing. I mean, just from my observation, we saw the budget of Stand Up Placer in the last 3 years virtually double because of the grant dollars that were coming in. And so, though it makes my job a little bit more difficult because that percentage, that dollar amount goes up, but the reality is without those grant dollars, we would not be able to serve as many people as we served. Last year, we served over 2,700 identified survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. So to me, we couldn't survive without those grant dollars. And I like to have that problem of having to go out there and raise more money to match that,
And then during that same time period, so 2015, we provided about 37,000 services to our survivors, and in 2018 that number was 111,000 services. We went from 20 staff who were able to do those 37,000 services to right now we're over 50. I want to say 53, and we have a few positions that are still yet to hire. And so then we have our human resources department hasn't grown, right? So now Marianne, who's awesome, but she's out there trying to do human resources for over 50 people where it used to be 20. And, we have, bookkeeper who now is having to do all of this work for, mileage checks for 50 people instead of 20. So part of that growth, that need for sort of the overhead growth comes with the growth of the program services. So I know a lot of times we hear about this overhead, like why is overhead so terrible? And people say, well, I looked them up on GuideStar, and this organization has a 10% overhead, and this organization has a 15% overhead. So if I want my money to make a difference, I need to give it to the one with the low overhead. But that's not necessarily true. So can you tell us a little bit about that overhead?
That's kind of a myth, right? And a great resource for people. We actually did. We went to a conference, a What If conference, hosted by the Impact Foundry, and they had a guest speaker there by the name of Dan Pilatus. So if you guys get a chance, you definitely want to check out his work. And he talks about this double standard in the marketplace, where we hold nonprofits to a higher standard in how they run their business. So this is a great example of that. You know, we don't question for-profit businesses this in depth on where their administrative costs are going. We don't question how much money they're paying their CEO. As a matter of fact, we expect that they're going to pay, the more that organization makes, the more they're going to pay that CEO. And it's kind of different in the nonprofit world. Yeah, it's a huge difference, right? So for us, what we try to do is help people see that the more dollars that come into our organization, the more people we can serve. So just in this example we just talked about, over the last 3 years, when we're around $1 million or $1.5 million at our budget, we're serving, you know, maybe 1,500 people, 1,000 people. When our dollars went up to $3.5 million, we're now doubling the amount of people that we can serve. We're uncovering so much more need in the community because of that. So when we invest in things like marketing and promotions material, when we invest in things like additional staff so that we can function more efficiently, all those things lead to us being in a better capacity to serve clients.
Right, absolutely. And I know that one really important thing about what we've seen with our clients is the really great success rate. Our survivors come into our services. You know, one day they're living in a home where they're surrounded by violence. They're afraid for their lives. Somebody's threatened to kill them. Maybe they have kids, maybe they don't. We don't. That's not a prerequisite, but maybe they do. And they leave everything behind. They've left behind, if you think about all the things that are really important to you, and you know, for me, I have my grandmother's china, that's super important. But if I had to leave a situation and I only had 5 minutes to pack, that's not going to end up in my backpack, right? And so they've left everything behind. They have their kids in tow. Maybe they grabbed a backpack that had their birth certificates and social security cards and maybe one outfit each. They come into our safe house and they have nothing, and they have to reestablish everything. Right.
From scratch.
So one fantastic thing that we have for them, they can go to our thrift store where they shop for free. All of our survivors shop for free. It's amazing. But it's also another area of unrestricted funding.
How we give, right? And so big shout out to Kirk. He's doing a great job with our thrift store. We've seen tremendous growth there. And I mean, we were just looking at the numbers before we got here, and we noticed that not only are we seeing more sales come through that thrift store, but we're also seeing more donations going out to our clients. And so, you know, if you go to our website, standupplacer.org, you'll see that there's an area there that talks about donate and our needs list. Our needs list, we update that as regularly as we can. At the end of the day, though, ultimately, you know, donations that come in, that's a part of unrestricted funding, which, right? So that when people give to our thrift store and we are able to turn around and sell those items to the public, those are unrestricted funds. Those are dollars that come into the organization that we can use for some of those more creative and unorthodox services.
Right. And a lot of times they're actually going into the home of a survivor.
Right.
So that's fantastic too. People know that, like, especially furniture very often ends up in the home of a survivor. We know pots and pans, other household items. Our survivors love going there to shop. And
salt and pepper shakers.
Yeah.
Who's going to leave their house with salt and pepper shakers in that situation, right? So absolutely.
Everything. That's awesome. And then what other areas, so you have the thrift store.
Right.
What are other things that you do in your role as development manager to bring in some of those unrestricted funds into the agency?
Yeah. Our marquee event, Stand Up and Dance with the Placer County Stars, we just hosted that March 23rd. That was a huge success. That is our biggest event of the year. We raised $72,000 in unrestricted funds in that event, so I feel like that was a pretty good success for my first time around.
That's fantastic. What is next year?
We've already got the date, March 21st, 2020. It'll also be at Orchard Creek Lodge again this year, who we love, and they work very well with us. So March 21st, 2020. You'll find that also on our Facebook page, so you can see that we've already got the event posted there, trying to get ahead. We've got 5 dancers lined up for next year. So we're already getting ahead of the game on that.
And we still need 5 more, though, right? So if somebody's listening and they think, I would like to take some dance lessons. Dance lessons are free.
Lessons with we're actually going to make a little twist this year and allow you to pick your instructor so that you can pick somebody out that might fit you a little bit better, and hopefully bring us in some new organizations to kind of continue to spread the word.
Maybe even somebody in your neighborhood, maybe.
Right.
Yeah,
local, so it'll be a little more convenient for you. So let's see, we got the event. That's a big part of it. Now, third-party fundraisers. We just co-hosted an event with Moms of Roseville West, and they hosted an event called Quarter Craze, which is really, really fun.
So much fun.
Oh my gosh. And we are actually going to be meeting with them on Friday. They're going to hand us a check for almost $10,000. So that's an example of a third-party fundraiser.
Yeah.
And of course we love those because we don't have to do all the work. We just come alongside them, and they provide the facility, they provide the promotions, they even go out and get auction items or whatever the event may entail. And they handle the bulk of the work, and we just put that extra promotions behind it to help raise awareness.
And there's another one coming up in September.
A big one, the Masquerade Ball with Placer Lives Foundation. Precious Lives Foundation. They're going to hold a Masquerade Ball, and I believe that's Friday, September 13th at also, Orchard Creek Lounge as well. So another huge third party. And also Roseville area newcomers and neighbors are hosting an event for us in November. So we've got our hands full when it comes to the third-party fundraisers, but really, like I said, our job is just to support.
And we love those. So if anybody out there is thinking, I want to make a big difference.
I have an idea.
Do you?
No,
they do. That person does.
Right.
They're listening. They have an idea right now.
Call us.
Call us, yes.
We'd love to hear it.
You can find our information on the website or on Facebook.
Right.
Give us a call and we'll work it out.
Direct message me, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm in all everywhere. Those areas. Yes. So.
And what are other ways that we...
So the last area I would say is, I don't want to say it's what's most important and what's least important, but definitely what's really important is individual donors and corporate sponsors or small business sponsors. That's the third bulk of where a lot of our unrestricted funds come from. So we actually have a Network for Good. So if you go to our webpage, standupplacer.org, and you go to the donate button, you'll see we have a Stand Strong campaign that's hosted by Network for Good. That's a great place for individual donors, folks that are in the community like you who are really this is touching your heart and you want to find a way to support our survivors. You can actually set up an ongoing contribution, a recurring donation. So we use Network for Good platform for that. And then every day we get a phone call from a new business who's interested in supporting what we do because they meet us out in the community, whether we're involved in the chamber events or maybe we're at a foundation event. And as we network, we always come across folks that are looking for ways to get involved. For instance, we just got a huge donation from Wells Fargo Advisors off of Douglas. They contributed almost 50 Easter baskets and like another 20 backpacks, right? So those relationships are very important because it's not just dollars that are coming in, it's also in-kind donations.
Yeah, and those are fantastic because every child who was in our Safe House and Housing program got an Easter basket this year. And things like that, it means so much to our families because otherwise they are looking at, really sparse holiday, and there's, with every holiday, just think of some of the fun memories you've made with your families, with your kids. What is, how is that so much harder for somebody who's living in communal living or they're living in a safe house? But so it's fantastic. We really appreciate all of those kinds of things.
Just that sense of normalcy from being able to celebrate a holiday under these circumstances can go a lifetime.
Yeah, really. And that's huge. Thanksgiving, Christmas, really every holiday when things come around, we have a community that really comes along and supports our survivors, which is just
absolutely
amazing. And then also another big thing that's going on is as our services have increased so drastically, what we've seen is our safe house need has increased drastically. For years and years, we've been around for over 40 years, we had about 100 people a year in our safe house. That was pretty average. Maybe 1 year would go 90, 1 year 110, 1 year 100, right? So but right in that number. And then we saw a sharp increase a couple years ago. Last year alone, we had 329 people in our safe house. So it's more than tripled. But the other thing that we saw happen was in years in the past, we never turned people away for our safe house. We always had a couple empty rooms. We would get them all made up. We'd have a little gift bag in there for the survivors when they came in. We made sure that we had things for their kids or whomever. And law enforcement would call and say, hey, we have a situation right now. We have not caught this violent person. They're out at large, and we need to get this survivor and their children into your safe house right now. And we always had space, right?
Right.
We had a room, and maybe, oh, they have little kids, so let's put some stuff in there for little kids, or their kids are teenagers. Make some adjustments, but it takes 5 minutes.
Right.
But now what we're seeing is, for the first time ever, we're at capacity all the time. We have a wait list. Law enforcement calls us and says, hey, we have this person who's in immediate danger right now. We may be able to put them in a hotel for a day or two, and it's nice if we know, oh, this person, they have an apartment they're going to be going into in a couple days. We're going to get them in there, but then we can cycle that person out and bring this new family in. But we've been so much at capacity that last year alone, we turned away over 500 people for our safe house. So where years past we only served 100, last year we served 329, but we turned away over 500.
Startling.
So something that we're looking at is an expansion.
Right.
And we're working with a few local groups right now. Homemade Sacramento is helping us toward that goal, and some friends from the community are coming along and helping us. Placer County's helped a lot. So we're looking at launching a capital campaign really soon. And some areas we definitely need volunteers from the community who want to be part of that, who want to help propel that forward.
Right.
We need people, we need board members too. That's another area for fundraising, getting board members on board who are even able to, I had never knew that how much I didn't know about what a project like this would entail until you start going to some of these county meetings and they say, you know, what does your minor use permit say? And I'm going, oh yeah, I should read that again, because it's been a couple of years since and remind me what a minor use permit is. No, I read it, I'm sure.
Right.
So then I'm having to do all this research, and the planning commission and facilities, and
so many moving parts.
All these moving parts, and so having volunteers who are willing to be part of that, especially in board leadership, and help propel that forward, that's a really huge need. But community should be expecting to hear from us a lot over the next couple of years as we launch that and start to get ready.
And on your point there, I did actually go online already. So through our Network for Good page, that people can start to contribute to our capital campaign. If that information touches your heart and you feel like, wow, I really want to be a part of contributing to that particular campaign, they could go on right now to our webpage, go to the donate section, and when they decide, they actually have an option on where they want their money to go. So the capital campaign is one of those options if you feel like you want to contribute to that.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and it's a really big need. I know everybody listening at home right now, they're shocked that, you know, with between who we served and what the need is, it's increased by 8 times this year. And I know all of us, you know, at the ground level, we're kind of scratching our heads and trying to figure out what to do about that. But something great that's come of it is we're also looking at prevention.
Right.
How can we intercede before people need to come into our safe house?
Get further up the river.
So people can come and be part of that. So we're talking a lot about giving financially, but giving time is another incredible way that people can make a difference.
Absolutely. Human capital is absolutely important. Volunteers on every different level. You touched on it. Board members, you know, we're currently sitting at about, I want to say 9 board members. We'd like to be around 15-ish or so.
Right. So we almost need to double our board capacity right now in order to be fully ready to take on this capital campaign. Right.
And we have a phenomenal board that all of their heart are truly in this, and so the more that people like them that we can bring on to this mission, and you have to understand it's not just about dollars and cents for the board, it's also about helping us extend our reach, you know, networking, volunteering for programs like, you know, things like the capital campaign, and being able just to go to meetings for someone that we can rely on who can handle some of these more, you know, complicated moving parts. Right. So,
introducing us to the people who can handle that, right? Exactly. So a lot of people say, well, I don't really know a lot about any of those things. Well, if you know people who know a lot about those things, you know, give us a call and make even a virtual introduction through email, things like that.
It's not always about what you know, but who you know. Sales thing, sorry.
Every now and then that comes back in, but that's natural. That's awesome. So again, I want to make sure that our viewers at home do know who we are, what we're doing, why we're here talking about fundraising. And there's right now, today is late April, but by the time this airs, it's probably going to be in May. So if this is before Big Day of Giving, just know that we are one of the participants in Big Day of Giving.
Absolutely.
A lot of other organizations out there, fantastic groups, have their Big Day of Giving campaign started. So go to, whether it's this year or next year, go to the Big Day of Giving website and look at what nonprofits you can help support.
Right.
And I think this year there's over 600. I'm sure
Correct.
next year will be the same. Look at ways in your community that you can take part in the thing that's interesting to you. So of course we're here talking about Stand Up Placer. We want you to come and help us, but we partner with some amazing other nonprofits in the community. And so find out the thing that really hits your heart. If you don't know, if you're sitting at home and thinking, I really do want to be a part of something, maybe this one's not speaking to me, but something else might. Placer Collaborative Network has a long list of nonprofits in our community and what they do. Placer Community Foundation is a fantastic place to find out about other nonprofits. So please do your research and find out different ways that you can participate in your community and be part of, whether it's our group or another group, and really come alongside. And I was going into my ending spiel, but I have to say one more thing I had forgotten to say, just because I need to make sure everybody knows this. Last year, Stand Up Placer made a huge change in our agency that only 3 to 10%, depends on which site you're quoting, of safe houses in the United States and Canada are pet friendly. And so we did a lot of work to make sure that everybody's furry family members were also welcome in our safe house. And that's just, it's been phenomenal. You can go to our website and there's a video on there that was produced by the BBC, just saying like what fantastic work is being done right now to make sure that pets are also safe, because we know that 70% of abusers will injure a pet in order to control the victim in their lives. And we know that 50% of our victims, survivors, stay longer because they're afraid of what will happen to their pets if they try to leave. So just know that if you're hearing all this and you're thinking, I need this help, I need to call Stand Up Placer, our crisis line is 1-800-575-5352, and our we have all of those services available, you know, regardless if you have a pet, regardless of gender, regardless of age, everything. You don't need to be a documented citizen of the United States to access any of our services. If you are a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking, all of these services are available. Again, 1-800-575-5352. Give us a call, and we can connect you with the services that you need. You don't have to access all of the services. If you're just like, that one thing they said, I just need that one thing, give us a call. We'll see how we can help you out. If you have a neighbor, a friend, a family member who you know is needing our services, you can call as well. Also, if you are part of a community group and you just want more information, give us a call, and we have an outreach team who can come and speak to your group and tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do and how you could access services and get the help that you need. So I want to thank everyone at home who's tuned in for the last half hour to hear a little bit more about Stand Up Placer and about how you can be part of this amazing team and make a difference in the life of the survivor. Thank you so much, and especially big, huge thanks to Allan, who I don't know if this is your personal television debut.
Absolutely.
You're doing well.
I've had a couple of, 15
moments.
seconds of fame, but this is the longest.
Okay, fantastic. You've been great, and you seem very comfortable, and I appreciate you coming out today and
my pleasure,
being part of this. So thank you all. Thank you especially to ACTV, who puts on all these great shows to help the nonprofits in our community to be able to reach the people they need to reach. So
absolutely,
thank you so much. Just saying goodbye.